This is sort of an elective topic, but I'm going to answer this question because somebody was asking me to follow up on the idea of cultures creating borders. So I'm going to start with the beginning of this, of how you get to a culture. A culture starts with somebody somewhere thinking about something, and in a lot of cases, not all cases, but in a lot of cases, they stop questioning themselves, right? So when they stop questioning themselves, they stop questioning their logic, and then they start telling other people that there are certain things that you are never allowed to question, right? Then you create effectively what would be called a cult, loosely termed. Now, what is a cult? All a cult is, it's a fairly benign definition, but it just means a group of people who believe in something, right? Okay, so this is the first start of that. You keep that thought around, and eventually it becomes a culture, right? That's where we get this from. It turns into a culture, and where there's just a bunch of people do it for this way because this is the way it's always been done to, for them, right, in their life. So it starts with, this thought, which turns into kind of an internalized religion, which is, and that's, I'm using the term religion in a very generic sense, okay? I'm using it in the more parochial sense than I am anything else, okay? So don't read too much into that. But it turns into a religion, which then, when you put it out there to other people and they start to believe it, and then you tell them they're not allowed to question anything about it, turns into a cult, which turns into a culture, and those cultures eventually create borders, right? Either virtual borders, as in with, that their own clan or tribe or whatever you want to call it, or physical borders. If they have, like a landmass, they might say, hey, everything on this side of the river is ours, kind of deal. That's how that stuff kind of starts, right? So now I realize that this is one of these things that isn't really talked about a lot and isn't taught, and it's for a number of reasons, right? Because when you start to think like this, then people will start questioning, the existing dogmas that are out there. So this is why I've always been a little frustrated with a lot of, frankly, with a lot of Christianity, is because they aren't questioning the way that they used to. So, for example, if you look at Josh, let's assume that he was, that all of that was real, okay? Well, nowhere in the New Testament does he say, you'll never ask me questions or never question any of my... No, in fact, he says the exact opposite. He has people questioning him all the time, and he's answering these things. And he does his best to answer the questions to the best of his ability, right? And sometimes with the story. Well, that's not shying away from questions. Right. That's actually the anti-religion, if you think about it. Right. I mean, that's one of the reasons why, in my opinion, why a lot of Christianity has been hated for so long, is because, technically speaking, if you really understand the idea of questioning authority all the time, right, that's anti-religion. It's right. I mean, that's kind of one way to look at it. Okay. Again, this is from an outsider atheist perspective, but I mean, like, that's how I see it. I call it like I see it. And if you're not allowed to ask any questions of somebody, then it's like, okay, well, if you're not allowed to question a certain type of dogma, well, then what you're creating effectively is the precursor to a religion, which creates, a small group of people, which turns into a culture, which, and these kinds of things end up happening. But that's how that kind of stuff, evolves. So I hope I answered that question for you about what I mean by how they create these things. And again, like I said, if you don't have physical borders, you will end up with like clan or tribe borders. Again, clan, C-L-A-N, not K-L-A-N. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about it in the very, again, generic, more parochial sense, okay? So I hope that makes sense to the person who asked that question.